PRV Tools, Part 1. So we're going to move on from this in-track view and actually go to the piano roll view window, because we're going to have a little bit more luck doing a lot of the editing we want to do here. So let's zoom in a little bit horizontally. You can see we have the tools. Already you can see a lot of information when I click on this. So it's telling me what key that it's currently on, which number that is, how many notes I just dragged it down, and how many I've selected, 1. So it's a lot of good information, right? Perfect. So in terms of what we want to do here, we have a number of different tools that we didn't have in the other view, at least easily accessible from here. Many of them we could use in both places, not all of them. I want to talk about some of them though. The first 3 are the same. We have a pattern brush tool, which is very cool. And we can choose different patterns in here. So these are mostly rhythmic things that were going on, but pretty cool nonetheless. I'm going to pick a pattern, pick the tool, and then I'm going to paint it out. In this case, it's showing up all over the place. Let's undo that last thing, go back to the beginning. And in this case, let's turn off the grid for a moment, or maybe just make the grid shorter. So 16th notes, let's do it 64th notes for a second. Okay. And let's choose a different rhythm pattern here. So you can see it's throwing out a pattern there based on the template that's used, and I did not take my finger off the mouse. I just drug it straight to the right and it filled in the pattern for me. So let's zoom out a little bit, start over. I want you to see this a little bit better in action. And let's go back to our selector tool for a moment. And let's delete everything. Use the same brush here. Let's zoom in back just a hair so we can see what note we're going to be on. And then let's push play on that, because you'll see that it has an interesting pattern to it. So that pattern came from this one that I chose here, and then I could paint it out using this tool. So very cool thing if you're doing rhythm stuff. If you need an idea for a cowbell part, that's a great place to do it. We have the scrub tool here, which allows us to scrub through the part. And then we have some other notes here. So this allows us to actually pick the bass note that's going to show up when we draw. So you can see the bass one there. Plus that we can add a dotted rhythm to that. And we can do triplets as well. And then we have the grid. So the grid really is going to help us with starting places, make sure we lock things in. In this case, if we want to do something a little bit less small in resolution. Next we have the pick tracks, and this is going to allow us to change the MIDI track we're working on so we can easily get to one of the other ones on either side, next or previous, or we can just pick which MIDI track we want to work on. So that's pretty cool. Then we have the show hide track pane over there, and we also have the controller pane. So this is where some of the power comes in, because it's hard in some ways to do a lot with both the notes and things like velocity, but now we can draw the velocity in quite easily. So these notes are now going to follow that velocity, so we can have it go however we want to. Perfect. We can also add an additional one here if we want to, and we can choose which one we're looking at based on what we have actually available. Right now we don't have a lot of different continuous controllers activated, but we could, so this is where that would live. We'll explore this more when we get into the MIDI editing, because continuous controllers is a huge part of MIDI, and we'll explore that more. And then we have all tracks, no tracks, invert tracks, etc. These ones actually will let us see all of the MIDI data all at once if we had multiple tracks, etc. Then we have the same show velocity tails. We also have the show hide grid. You can see these other red lines there. go on and off. I'm sure we can customize what those are. One of my favorites is to follow snap settings. So if we're using a different snap setting than what we have currently, like quarter note, those would change to match that instead. So that way we can actually see exactly what's happening with that. So in this case, let's change the grid one more time to eighth notes. Twice as many lines there. If I have it follow snap like that, it's also going to indicate to me what my snap setting is, which becomes important. Last but not least, we can show durations, and we can zoom using the zoom tool. So that's pretty handy as well. Okay, so that's a brief look at these tools. We're going to go into another part with this and explore a lot of them more in depth, some of the more advanced features with those. So let's move on to the next part.